You are not broken because your bank account is small. You are not failing because the numbers refuse to grow. The problem is not the amount of money you possess. The problem is the amount of emotion you attach to it. Every financial decision you make is colored by fear, by greed, by the desperate need to feel secure in a world that promises nothing. This is why you chase returns you cannot sustain. This is why you panic when markets fall. This is why you spend what you cannot afford to impress people who do not care. The wealth mindset you seek will never arrive through more income. It arrives through less feeling. This video will show you how emotional discipline transforms your relationship with money, how Stoic investment strategy replaces chaos with clarity, and how financial control begins not in your wallet but in your mind. There was a man who earned $200,000 each year. His home was large. His car was new. His vacations were frequent, yet he could not sleep. Every month, he watched his accounts with the vigilance of a soldier guarding a border. When the stock market rose, he felt invincible. When it fell, he felt doomed. He would check his portfolio 17 times each day, his heart racing with each notification, his stomach tightening with each red number. He told himself he was being responsible. He told himself he was staying informed. But the truth was simpler and more painful. He was enslaved by his own market volatility of emotion. His wealth was growing, but his peace was dying. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of losses, he sat alone in his expensive kitchen and realized something devastating. He had more money than his parents ever dreamed of possessing, yet he felt poorer than they ever looked. They had lived simply, saved quietly, and never once appeared tormented by the movement of numbers on a screen. His father had worked a modest job for 40 years. His mother had managed their household with careful precision. They never owned luxury items. They never displayed their success because they defined success differently. They measured it in stability, in relationships, in the absence of financial anxiety. He, on the other hand, had built his entire identity on capital preservation and growth, yet he preserved nothing of his own sanity. The anxiety you feel when looking at your own bank account is not unique. It is universal. It is the tax we pay for allowing our emotions to dictate our financial decisions. The man began to search for answers. He read books on investing. He followed analysts. He diversified his portfolio, but nothing changed. The fear remained. The greed remained. The endless cycle of euphoria and panic remained. It was only when he encountered the writings of the Stoics that he understood his fundamental error. He had been trying to control the market. He had been trying to predict the future. He had been trying to eliminate risk. All of these were impossible. All of these were external. The Stoics taught him something radical and liberating. You cannot control what the market does. You can only control what you do within it. You cannot control whether you become rich. You can only control whether you become wise. This shift in perspective did not happen overnight. It required him to face the uncomfortable truth that most of his emotional discipline had been directed at the wrong target. He had been disciplining himself to track numbers, to analyze trends, to react faster. But he had never disciplined himself to feel less, to need less, to fear less. The Stoics did not teach him to abandon his wealth. They taught him to abandon his attachment to it. They taught him that true financial control is not about controlling outcomes. It is about controlling responses. Seneca once wrote that wealth is the slave of a wise man and the master of a fool. This distinction is not about the amount of money you hold. It is about the amount of power you give that money over your inner state. When you allow your emotions to rise and fall with your account balance, you have made money your master. When you maintain your composure regardless of gain or loss, you have made money your slave. The difference between these two positions is the difference between freedom and bondage. Consider the analogy of a ship at sea. The ocean will do what the ocean does. Storms will come. Calm waters will come. Waves will rise and fall according to forces far beyond your control. If you are the captain of that ship, you have two choices. You can rage at the storm, panic during the waves, and exhaust yourself trying to command the ocean to be still. Or you can accept the nature of the sea, adjust your sails, and navigate with skill and patience. The ocean represents market volatility. Your ship represents your portfolio management. Your skill as captain represents your Stoic principles. You cannot calm the ocean. You can only calm yourself. Epictetus taught that we must distinguish between what is in our control and what is not. This distinction is the foundation of all Stoic practice, and it applies with brutal precision to long-term investing. You do not control whether the market rises tomorrow. You do not control whether your stock picks succeed. You do not control global economic forces, political instability, or the decisions of millions of other investors. These are external. These are indifferent. What you do control is your allocation strategy, your savings rate, your spending habits, your reaction to losses, your discipline during gains. These are internal. These are yours. Most people invert this relationship. They obsess over the external and neglect the internal. They spend hours analyzing which stocks to buy while spending 0 minutes analyzing why they feel compelled to check their portfolio every hour. They research capital preservation techniques, but never question why they need so desperately to preserve capital in the first place. This inversion is the source of all financial suffering. If you focus on your internal control, the external takes care of itself. If you focus on the external, neither the external nor the internal will ever be at peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals that the universe is change, and life is opinion. Your financial reality is not determined by the numbers themselves. It is determined by the opinion you hold about those numbers. Two people can lose $10,000. One will spiral into despair. The other will shrug and adjust. The difference is not in the loss. The difference is in the emotional discipline each person has cultivated. The market does not care about your feelings. The market does not owe you profits. The market simply exists. Your task is not to conquer it. Your task is to conquer yourself. If you focus on your internal control, write indifferent in the comments. Let that word remind you of what the Stoics knew. External events are indifferent. They are neither good nor bad. Only your judgment makes them so. Now we translate philosophy into practice. The Stoic approach to wealth mindset is not passive. It is not about sitting still and hoping for the best. It is about building systems that remove emotion from the equation. It is about creating frameworks that allow you to act with wisdom regardless of how you feel. Here is how you apply Stoic investment strategy to your daily financial life. First, establish a rule for checking your accounts. Emotion thrives on frequency. The more often you check your portfolio, the more emotional volatility you introduce into your mind. The man from our story checked his accounts 17 times per day. Each check was a small dose of anxiety or euphoria. By the end of the week, he had injected himself with over 100 doses of unnecessary emotional turbulence. The Stoic solution is simple. Check once per week or once per month. Choose a frequency that allows you to stay informed without becoming enslaved. When you check less often, you train your mind to detach from the short-term noise. You begin to see the long-term trend. You begin to think like an investor rather than a gambler. Second, separate your identity from your net worth. This is perhaps the most difficult practice, but it is also the most liberating. You are not your bank account. Your value as a human being is not determined by the number of zeros you possess. The culture around you will try to convince you otherwise. It will show you images of success defined by luxury. It will tell you that your worth is measurable in dollars. The Stoics rejected this entirely. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, yet he wrote constantly about the dangers of mistaking wealth for virtue. He knew that money could be lost in an instant. Virtue could not. Build your identity on what you control, your character, your discipline, your capacity to act with wisdom. These cannot be taken from you by a market crash. Third, practice how to stop impulse spending through the discipline of delayed gratification. Before making any non-essential purchase, wait 72 hours. During those 3 days, ask yourself 3 questions. Do I need this, or do I want this? Will this improve my life in 6 months? Am I buying this to solve an internal problem with an external solution? Most impulse purchases are emotional transactions. You feel inadequate, so you buy status. You feel bored, so you buy stimulation. You feel insecure, so you buy comfort. The Stoics understood that these purchases never solve the underlying emotion. They only distract you temporarily. By waiting 72 hours, you allow the emotion to pass. You allow rationality to return. You save money not by restricting yourself, but by seeing clearly. Fourth, create a building wealth quietly strategy by rejecting the need to display your success. The wealthiest people in history were often invisible. They drove modest cars. They wore unremarkable clothes. They lived in homes that did not announce their net worth. This was not because they were miserly. It was because they understood that visible wealth attracts envy, expectation, and the constant pressure to maintain an image. The Stoic builds wealth in silence. You do not need others to know you are successful. You need only to know it yourself. When you remove the performative aspect of wealth, you remove half the expense. You stop buying things to impress. You start buying things that serve. Fifth, implement a rule for losses that protects your mind. When you experience a financial loss, whether in the market or through an unexpected expense, pause before reacting. Write down the loss. Then write down 3 things you still control: your health, your skills, your ability to earn. The Stoics called this the practice of reserve clause. In every situation, there is something you can still control. By focusing on that, you prevent the loss from becoming a catastrophe in your mind. A $10,000 loss is just a number. It becomes suffering only when you tell yourself a story about what it means. Change the story. Keep the facts. Sixth, establish a non-negotiable savings rate that operates independently of your emotions. The most common financial mistake is to save what is left after spending. This approach guarantees failure because there is always something left to spend. The Stoic inverts this. You save first. You automate the transfer. You remove the decision from your daily life. Whether you feel generous or fearful or excited, the savings happen. This is capital preservation at its finest. You protect your future self from your present emotions. You build wealth not through willpower but through systems. Seventh, diversify not only your investments but your identity. If all your self-worth is tied to your career, a job loss will destroy you. If all your security is tied to your portfolio, a market crash will destroy you. The Stoic spreads their sense of self across multiple domains: relationships, health, intellectual growth, creative pursuits. When one domain suffers, the others remain intact. This is portfolio management applied to life itself. You are not a single asset. You are a balanced fund. Eighth, practice gratitude for what you already possess. This is not a platitude. It is a financial strategy. The person who feels wealthy with little will always be wealthier than the person who feels poor with much. Gratitude shifts your baseline. It makes you less susceptible to lifestyle inflation. It makes you less vulnerable to the constant marketing messages telling you that you need more. The Stoics practiced daily reflection on their blessings, not to be naive, but to be accurate. You already have more than billions of people who came before you. You already have access to opportunities that kings would have envied. This does not mean you stop striving. It means you stop suffering. The system wants you poor. Not necessarily in dollars, though often that too. It wants you poor in spirit, poor in patience, poor in the capacity to think beyond the next dopamine hit. It wants you to believe that happiness is always one purchase away, one promotion away, one lucky investment away. The Stoics knew this was a lie 2,000 years ago. It is still a lie today. You do not need more money. You need less emotion. You need the discipline to separate your peace from your portfolio. You need the courage to define success on your own terms rather than the terms sold to you by people profiting from your insecurity. The man from our story did not become poor when he adopted Stoic principles. He became wealthier, not because his account balance changed dramatically, but because his relationship with that balance changed completely. He stopped checking compulsively. He stopped panicking during downturns. He stopped fantasizing during upswings. He simply followed his plan, adjusted when necessary, and lived his life. The numbers still moved, but he did not move with them. That is freedom. That is the wealth mindset no amount of money can buy. Consider what your life would look like if you removed emotion from your financial decisions. If you stopped feeling inadequate when others displayed their wealth. If you stopped feeling terrified when the market corrected. If you stopped feeling euphoric when gains arrived. You would not become a robot. You would become free. Free to make decisions based on logic rather than fear. Free to pursue long-term investing without the constant noise of short-term anxiety. Free to build the life you actually want rather than the life you think will impress others. The path forward is not complicated. It is simply difficult because it requires you to confront the emotions you have been avoiding. It requires you to admit that your financial stress is not primarily about money. It is about the meaning you have assigned to money. It is about the identity you have built around accumulation. The Stoics offer you a way out, not through abandoning wealth but through mastering yourself. Not through rejecting money, but through refusing to let money reject your peace. Seneca once asked whether we possess our wealth or whether our wealth possesses us. The answer is revealed in how you feel when you lose it. If losing money destroys you, you never owned it. It owned you. The goal of Stoic investment strategy is not to never lose money. The goal is to never lose yourself. Markets will crash. Investments will fail. Unexpected expenses will arrive. These are certainties. Your response to them is not. You can choose to remain calm. You can choose to adapt. You can choose to continue. True financial control is not about controlling outcomes. It is about controlling responses. The person who panics during a crash has no control. The person who remains steady has all the control that matters. This steadiness is not natural. It is trained. You train it by practicing detachment daily, by reminding yourself what you control and what you do not, by building systems that remove decision fatigue, by living below your means not as a sacrifice but as a strategic choice, by defining wealth as freedom rather than excess. The system wants you to believe that you are what you earn, that your worth is your net worth, that your success is measurable in status symbols and account balances. Stoicism makes you free by showing you the lie. You are not your money. Your money is a tool, a useful tool, but a tool nonetheless. When you treat it as such, you use it wisely. When you worship it, it uses you. Subscribe to Money and Stoicism to master your finances and your mind. Like this video if you seek true freedom.